Thank you for tuning in and watching. Today we have a very special guest in Max Feinstein. He's a musician, an inventor, and a hemophilia advocate. I think there's going to be a lot to learn from his story, and then hopefully he'll play a little music for us at the end. So stay tuned, and hope you enjoy the episode.
Chronic illness, chronic anger, chronic shame, and chronic doubt. Lack of self-control is turning you into a burning house.
All right, Max. Well, welcome to the LAX podcast. This is the 6th episode now, so I'm really excited to have you on. I know you've been a big part of the hemophilia community lately with, your music, and, you've done some cartoon work that I've noticed, and you're just trying to go out there and spread your message. So I can't wait to dig into your message and what you're trying to get out to the community. So, but welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I want to, I just want to get a briefing. I want everyone to get a briefing on you in case they don't know you. Why don't you talk about your disorder and kind of like when you were diagnosed and what that role was with you and your family?
All right. Well, my name is Max Feinstein. I was diagnosed with hemophilia A, originally mild.
Oh, wow.
At a year old, for whatever reason. And then around 17, 18, I was reassessed as moderate at 1%. So technically speaking, the diagnosis is moderate, clinically severe. So it's that like kind of teeter-totter.
Yeah.
About whether or not I should get a tattoo changed or what, because I have moderate hemophilia A written on my arm.
Oh, okay.
But also, technically I'm not wrong. It's murky. However, that reassessment came around the time I developed a target joint in my right elbow. I'm a musician. That was right when I was starting to get into it. And then by 21, bone-on-bone arthritic in the right elbow, and just kind of brings us up to speed. I managed to work through a lot of physical therapy during COVID to gain back like some quality of life shit that I haven't had for the last 10 years. So
I saw that. There. Yeah, it's exciting. I definitely want to talk about that a little bit later. Yeah. But as you were like growing up, were you the first in your family with this?
Yeah. And what ended up being the case is that my mother, after I was born, was diagnosed as a carrier. So technically speaking, we can say that she was the spontaneous mutation, it seems. My sister is not a carrier. My newly born nephew is not a hemophiliac.
Okay.
These are things I am grateful for.
Yeah. So any kids?
Me? No.
Yeah. No. Do you plan on having any kids in the future?
At this point, my thought on the matter is that whatever the heck this is the end of that.
Really? Wow.
I may, I reserve the right to change my mind, but
yeah, absolutely.
As of now,
that's pretty powerful. Yeah.
Where I'm standing, I don't feel like I'm enough of a person to be a father. I don't feel as though I am capable enough within what I'm doing to feel responsible enough for a human life and the compromise that might put on the work I feel is ahead of me.
Wow, man, that's pretty powerful to hear you say that. I didn't go through that decision-making process because I was kind of an idiot kid. I was 19 and had my first kid, and I wasn't really thinking. I didn't really have a clear mindset like that. But so it's actually really powerful to hear someone have that outlook and be like, you know what, I don't think I can be who I truly want to be to my kid.
Yeah. I would like to think that I could be a good father at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. I enjoy being a mentor. And through that, I feel as though there are, there are aspects of fathership like mentoring and leading, being a leader that are valuable to me. So I appreciate those quite a bit.
Yeah, man. And, one of the reasons why I created this podcast in the beginning was because I started to realize I was getting a lot more messages from parents with newly diagnosed children. And they wanted to know so much information on what was their kid's quality of life going to be like. And they were just so scared. And like, what's my kid going to go through emotionally and physically? Parents really want to know and understand that better. So, like one of the questions I have for you is what are some of the struggles that you face kind of like as you're getting older, going through school, young adult years? What are some of the struggles you had getting to know yourself and your disorder and like what that meant, how to manage it?
So this is where things get kind of interesting for me in that I really ran away from it. And that's not an uncommon story in the community, that you try to sweep it under the rug for a while, that you just, as a kid, you fight against it. You just want to be ordinary. You're you're not opening up. You're not letting people in, even though this is supposed to be the time in which you are. And part of me looking back at this in some ways is more retrospective. I'm not trying to seem pity. I'm not trying to be piteous here. I'm not trying to seem too focused on the sad part. I'm trying to organize it for myself, and that's sort of what life is currently. That
Yeah.
I grew up with a lot of opportunities. I had a very good childhood. On a medical level, I wanted for nothing. But as one of my friends, who is an Indian exchange student with hemophilia, has said this year to me, is that at first we joked about that sort of spoiled American outlook.
Yeah.
Because in India, he had to really work for his meds, or it was a very specific and strict system. So it was more important for me.
Mm.
They were there. They were always there. That's a confidence that I've had.
Yeah.
The and A few months later, he told me that he understood. He's like, because you can have all the access to medication in the world, and for some bleeds it still isn't enough.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
happens here, you want to know, you have parents who want to know what to look out for.
Mm.
This is what I went through in part. I got so tired of hemophilia, I got so tired of talking about it, that I used to make up stories about why I felt bad. I used to imagine bullies and other things that maybe I saw on TV, because I was just so tired of talking about hemophilia. I wasn't
Mm.
equipped properly emotionally, and that didn't help me. That made things much worse,
Yeah.
because rather than just talking about the thing that was really on my mind, I
Mm.
created this whole other world
Yeah.
that really, when I look back on it, was a regretful vacuum of time and
Mm.
emotion for everybody involved.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
part of that may be because when you do open up for real, uh, sometimes people are not prepared to handle that, and they think that something else needs to happen, especially hemo moms. Hemo moms
Mm.
are an incredibly potent, powerful resource. I shouldn't say that, because people are people,
Yeah.
but they're not resources. They are people,
Mm.
and they are some of the most determined and effective people that you will ever meet.
Yeah.
So when you have a child whose blood doesn't work, naturally speaking, you're going to be in this extreme mama bear, seal the deal on everything fast kind of mindset. That's
Yeah.
just how that goes.
Yeah.
That is story after story of hemo moms. So they are thinking about it. They're like, you got to see a psychiatrist, or you got to see a therapist, or whatever. And when you're 10 years old, you associate every doctor's visit with getting stuck with stuff, and you don't
Yeah.
deal with it well. And so when you're in a therapist chair, you associate all of that with sort of a punishment,
Yeah.
and you become frustrated, because you opened up, you tried to do the thing that they were asking you to do, and your
Mm.
sincerity is rewarded with another brick wall. So you end up with this resentment of that, and this almost mistrust. And then because you were uncooperative, you
Yeah.
you end up with further consequences,
Mm.
because you were not doing the obedient thing, or you were not doing what was expected. And it seems as though perhaps you are just being difficult.
Mm.
there's a whole string of things to unpack there.
Yeah.
And because, after that, it's like you get grounded, and you're like, I'm grounded because I'm upset
Mhm.
that me opening up did this. Come on, where was my say in this?
Yeah.
Where was I was trying to start the dialogue, and maybe because I was a kid and I was bad at it,
Yeah.
that's why we led there. There were a lot of reasons. There's a lot of
Mhm.
objective fault that lies with the child, and I will not absolve myself from it due
Mhm.
to my youth, but acknowledge that my youth played a big part in it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of rage, there was a lot of misunderstanding. My parents actively did the best they could, and I would say,
Yeah.
in many ways, despite those misunderstandings, they went above and beyond their Call of Duty quite handily.
Yeah.
So it's been that's a complicated one.
Yeah. So
Uh,
what do you think? Do you think, like, I mean, you kind of mentor or mentioned like mentorship is being part of your role now. I mean, do you think that if kids had more mentorship and actually now with access to social media and stuff, there kind of is more access to maybe a mentorship program of some sort. Do you think that would help with the mental aspect of dealing with it?
it's complicated because I perhaps I had the access to that as well as a kid, but
Hmm.
there are multiple things. One of the bleeding disorders community problems that is regularly discussed is retention, community retention,
Hmm.
and part of that is, I think, because there's a modicum of forced participation. So perhaps a mentorship program, and like it could do well for
Hmm.
the right person to be receptive to it.
Yeah.
So it's I've had a lot of these conversations
Hmm.
with others that are taking this mental health initiative, and I would never kick any endeavor out of bed, but I would recognize that not all temperaments are prepared to receive help when it's offered. That it's a determination, much like in the situation of my childhood, where I was not prepared
Yeah.
to to receive help, and I could not have it forced down my throat.
Yeah.
I would not participate. I became defiant about my
Yeah.
participation. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it
I can relate.
and it may be one of those things where those are the people who really need it too. Everybody
Mhm.
needs what I think is validating here. What I try to do with this is I try to be, and I know you try to be candid in your way as well, but I try to, as I've been doing here, sort of spell it out, because
Yeah.
I feel that externalizing like this almost depowers it, or it lets me turn it into something definable that I
Mhm.
can then sort of put away, and that's sort of my relationship with my emotions. So
Yeah.
if I can if I can find a way to come by who I am, what this is honestly,
Mhm.
and find a way to make it less intense and more objective,
Mhm.
to the point where I think I feel like I understand it, then
Yeah.
maybe other people can feel understood in that representation, and they may want to engage.
Yeah.
That's been my
Mhm.
experience with this before, is that
Mhm.
my own personal candidness, my own personal
Mhm.
willingness to share is been cathartic for others to watch. So
Yeah.
mentorship looks like different things,
Yeah.
and mentorship, to be able to demonstrate through example is
Mhm.
important.
Yeah.
It very much, to see if other people can get the same thing out of it, because if I'm not getting anything out of it, why would anyone else?
Yeah. Yeah. So um who are some of the people that you've kind of looked for inspiration and motivation with, within the community?
My biggest inspiration in this community, there are really two.
Mhm.
My mother, just her strength of character. She was uh, quite influential in the New Jersey Hemophilia
Okay.
Association. She at one point had a leadership role. She then worked for. She then transitioned from uh, the generalness of that role into a more female focused role
Oh wow.
for Project Red Flag, which was an initiative of NHF.
Okay.
By the end of her life, she had founded her own nonprofit for women and girls with blood disorders.
Really?
So,
Wow. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
yeah, my mother was very much that activist, and
Wow.
there was a strength of determination to her that
Mhm.
every hemo mom has, but
Wow.
also a
That's incredible,
willing.
man.
Yeah, my mother was a person beyond my comprehension,
I would
and
be extremely proud of that. That is
I'm
so amazing. Yeah.
I'm hoping later this year for another project I'm working on to remember her through the eyes of her peers.
Yeah.
uh, who would truly, because by nature of being her son and by being a child,
Hmm.
let alone a child with the mindset that I had,
Yeah.
I could not begin to appreciate the depths of who she was in
Hmm.
that situation. So to
Yeah.
hear it through the eyes of her contemporaries and her friends
Yeah.
would allow me to appreciate just what the hell kind of woman she really was.
Yeah.
So, because she really apparently brought the best out of a lot of people, and that's something
Yeah.
within the community I endeavor to do. I try to
Hmm.
bring the best out of a situation. I try to behave with a sense of
Hmm.
justice as well as a sense of communication.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I,
You're a very good communicator. That's for sure.
it's
You have a good way with words,
you work at it.
which is probably why you're a musician. So.
It's fun. The craft is fun for me. Wordplay is fun, but you know how it is. You grow up learning complicated medical words
Hmm.
at the same time as you're learning see, spot, runs fast. It's
Hmm.
weird. It's a little trip.
Yeah.
Uh, that's really to me. I like words a lot,
Yeah.
actually.
So let's talk about music a little bit more, like as you're growing up with it. So kind of like prior to transitioning into advocacy, how did you like find music? What was that like for you? Was that initially just your way to escape everything?
Yes, it was my way to feel like I could relate to people because at the time I didn't feel like I mean I felt like I bonded with people
Yeah.
over perhaps unique experiences or for a while I was that kid who was into trading cards, and
Mhm.
to me I didn't, it was a fun way to participate, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day it was about the thing and not the experience. So I couldn't derive a proper meaning from it.
Yeah.
um, I found music to be something that was interesting to a lot of people and to myself. So I found it to be, it was loud. It was a place where it was okay to be loud
Yeah.
because, we're about the same age. We both kind
Mhm.
of grew up with a lot of the same modern stuff. And so you ever,
Yeah. Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears. Yeah.
oh, yo, I wore out a copy of Millennium. I have no shame about
I
that.
know. Hey, me neither. It's still on my playlist, man. I got Backstreet Boys on my playlist still.
I
So
mean, that stuff's popular for a reason. And,
I,
and but seeing some kids in middle school playing like
yeah,
Nirvana, like hearing some
yeah,
actual Overdrive and up close,
yeah,
it felt like a way to be edgy and
yeah,
without actually having any edges around to poke myself on.
yeah. So was it always kind of like that hard rock for you? Like just
Eh, a little.
yeah,
I mean, I like that because it's really gratifying, but
yeah,
I didn't uh like I grew up with a lot of show tunes in my household. I grew up with a
mhm,
sister who was into a lot of mainstream rock, a little older than me, so I got exposed to a lot of the 90s stuff earlier.
yeah,
But where I really came into it was where I found myself liking it the best was what
mhm,
was driving, where there's a lot of really propulsive drums, but
yeah,
also I found myself appreciating grooves as I got to be more of a musician. But at first,
yeah,
I remember hearing a lot of, there was a lot of heavy metal around that was very aggro.
mm,
There a lot of that new metal stuff, and
yeah,
even a band like Slipknot who started out
mhm,
very
yeah,
uh, they started out very, I don't know how else to put it, butt rocky, like very much like, oh, I'm gonna beat you up or
yeah.
something.
Oh yeah.
The way that like Trapped is, or things like,
Mhm,
or the way that New York City hardcore is, and
yep.
so I was not so much a fan of that, or even mostly aggressive
Okay.
singing. I had to come around to that. I was more
Yeah,
a fan of like this, stuff like Incubus and Chili Peppers and
yeah,
Blink, where it was like, okay, this is people blowing off steam. This is,
yeah,
some of it felt celebratory in a way, which to
yeah.
me that's music is celebratory. It's a way to let things out.
Mm. Was music always like something very serious for you? Like, did it take off like right away? Like you were just like, oh man, this is it for me, and you just kind of went full speed with music.
Sorta. I mean, when the guitar clicked, it clicked.
Yeah.
But before that, I had tried other things. Sang in choir, which was all right, but I didn't necessarily care for it fully. I tried like violin, I tried cello, I tried all this other shit. Not
Yeah.
cello, but like flute. and clarinet, and I couldn't do a whole lot of the embouchure, the mouth stuff to make noise on it. So
Yeah.
when guitar clicked, it became the thing I wanted to live in.
Yeah. And when did you start creating like your own lyrics?
Uh
Writing your own music?
Lyrics have I have had a complicated relationship.
Really? Okay.
Um, I wasn't great at them, and I wasn't
Mm.
allowing myself to like. I wouldn't invest time in them. I would try to write, and I found some steam at it. I had been writing songs as early as you write your first shitty couple of songs when you're like
Mhm.
eight. I was in eighth grade, and they were like
Yeah.
really very not so subtle
Mm.
rip-offs of what was around
Oh,
me. They
gotcha.
didn't, they were a combination of chords because that was the
Yeah.
combination you knew.
Yeah. That
So
makes
I
sense.
didn't, I didn't start to become experimental truly with
Mhm.
that stuff maybe till high school, but it started with me joining other people's bands and learning
Okay.
how to play their songs or figuring out what I could offer to what already existed. I've been drawn to
Yeah.
confident and realized songwriters as early as freshman high school.
Yeah.
Uh, I started writing my own stuff confidently, or at least with some semblance of originality. I'd say in junior year, but that was when my elbow started bleeding. And a point I meant to make before I got all cerebral about it is that hemophilia gaslights you. Like hemophilia, and you know this as somebody who had to basically teach himself a connection to his body.
Mhm.
That hemophilia makes it real easy for you not to have any faith in your body and make you uh, completely lose touch or belief in it because you're used to it failing you so much and you're used to
Yeah.
tuning out so much pain that you've got no desire to have a sense of physicality at all.
Yeah.
So like around there is when I kind of started shutting down emotionally, but
Mm.
like I was really feeling myself before then, and I was starting to really get good, and I
Yeah.
kept going and I kept improving and I kept working, but it wasn't the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of read about that. Like you kind of like lost, like, are you forgot essentially like how to play the guitar and you kind of had to like reteach yourself?
Not so much forgot.
Okay.
What happened was with my elbow becoming more and more of an issue,
Yeah.
I had to figure out different things to do. I had to figure out what was comfortable for me to do with my right arm.
Yeah.
So for a while, it was a difficult thing, but thankfully
Mm.
at that point it was not as it was not as dramatic perhaps as that interpretation leads one to believe,
Yeah.
because I would say that while I was writing I wasn't necessarily as developed a musician enough that I would
Mhm.
need to relearn critical things that were stylistic.
Yeah.
I would actually say what this did was it helped me develop my aesthetic as a player
Mm.
in certain ways. It leaned me towards things that I could do reliably and
Yeah.
sort of compensating. So perhaps if I couldn't do a lot with the right hand,
Yeah.
with the rhythm hand, I might do more elaborate things with the left, or I'd compensate in
Mhm.
different ways.
I like that, man. That's awesome. Yeah. So, like, having hemophilia, it's a bleeding disorder and we get these bleeds and we have to deal with them, trying to manage them. But in a way, that's just the start of the hemophilia journey. Then we go through other stages where, you're going through chronic pain and, even depression. So, like, what are some of the things that like you would want the public to know about people who have hemophilia or chronic disorder? Like, what should they know about, what should the public know about us?
First things first, living with a chronic disorder, no matter how well managed, can be beyond chaotic. Your body is chaos at a cellular level, essentially, because something in you doesn't work, and no matter how well you manage it, there is still that opportunity for it to fail.
Mm.
Secondly, that mindset is something that is likely on your mind, LA, as much as mine, that you're like, oh yeah, yep, I'm still a hemophiliac, that's for sure. It's kind of like having a file on your phone that takes up like 40% of your memory, and you
Mhm.
can't open it and you can't delete it. So it's just kind of there. So
Yeah.
you don't get to devote that part of your brain power to other things.
Mm.
It's like they say, with a man thinks about sex every like 7 seconds.
Yeah.
We're probably thinking about hemophilia every five. You
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
that sort of deal. So
Yeah.
So it's not just your body. You remember this. You remember this as much as you remember. You have to make your life accommodations for this the same way you would if you had a dog that needed walking or a child that needed feeding. This is
Yeah.
exactly as important, managing your condition.
Yeah.
So, because it's not visible does not mean it does not demand,
Mm.
and validly so, that chunk of your time and effort.
Yeah.
Um, that just because the meds have been administered does not mean you are better immediately. There is a lag behind
Mm.
that, and that I guess those are the big
Yeah.
considerations.
How has it affected your relationships, and how have you had to manage, whether it's a personal relationship with a friend or a significant other? How have you learned to develop relationships and maintain them? And have you lost relationships because of people just not understanding?
In some ways, it has affected me largely positively
Hmm.
because, by and large, I've learned how to speak about it in such a quick and relatable way for the sake of touring, or for the sake of, because as you know, it can be quite easy for someone who doesn't get it to view you as a liability almost immediately.
Yeah.
It becomes a matter of, oh fuck, is this thing going to, when is this going to present an issue,
Mhm.
is this going to be some real problem, especially if you don't know anything about the disorder. So I got real good at the shorthand of it when I would tour, and say like, hey guys, I'm doing this, I got to do this like twice 3 times a week. It's a needle, so if y'all are squeamish, go take a walk, I'll be done in 15.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm just kind of like, hey, this is something that I have to do, and no one,
Yeah.
by and large, has been of issue with it. I've had an issue in which somebody was frustrated with me about that, but looking back on that, it was likely a deeper issue than
Yeah.
that, and this was a tipping point. So I can't fault it there.
Mm.
My wife has been nothing but compassionate
Mm.
um, about it, and I've been with her in a relationship for the last decade. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate that that's been okay for me. But all of this has taught me how to kind of make allies.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
been sort of what I try to do in the community, and what I try to show in the community is like how to speak about it
Yeah.
uh, without connoting drama, without without making it something that seems like it's an immediate crisis.
Yeah.
So because if your behavior is ordinary about it and you're not coy or cagey when it's appropriate, then you
Yeah.
can normalize that. So like I was on tour uh, with my band BWQ,
Mhm.
and it was amazing except for the fact that I had nosebleeds for 2 weeks straight.
Oh, wow.
And and throughout this, they saw what I was going through, and thankfully it was nosebleeds and not elbow or anything else, because I've had
Yeah.
those, and those are a lot easier to those are a lot easier to sort of not explain well,
Yeah.
but also they're a lot more painful. At least a
Mhm.
nosebleed demonstrates the point pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm happy about it for that, because they don't really hurt.
Yeah.
So it gave me the opportunity to just kind of educate them a bit on it, because they were thankfully, out of their concern came curiosity, because I was just treating it like it was a thing.
Yeah.
So between all of that, I was able to figure out how to speak about this in a way that wouldn't. Basically, I had to figure out how to make other people comfortable with it, which I
Yeah.
didn't mind doing because I wanted to tour. I love touring. So
You kind of took accountability in the process of educating people around you on what your needs were and how you
yeah,
want to be treated. Because I,
well, yeah, I didn't want to take up any more space in their head
yeah,
than I had to.
that's
So
awesome. Yeah.
I tried to define it very clearly. Like,
Yeah.
look, this is me. By and large, it's managed. If it's not managed, I will be the first to tell you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you this now so that
That's
you
that's
don't.
a very good tip, I think, to give people. That's awesome because it took me a while to do that, but
Yeah,
that is really good.
it's easy to not want to make it someone's problem, and then what happens as an unfortunate result of that
Yeah.
is that if it does become someone's problem, then they have to internalize a whole new concept in the
Mhm.
middle of a crisis.
Yep.
So it's kind of like somebody teaching you CPR while someone
Yeah.
is suffocating next to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Like, that's a
Bad
yeah,
timing.
that yup. Or and maybe it's the person with CPR trying to teach you how to give CPR. Like,
Yeah.
okay, this metaphor is getting weird, but you get it.
I got a question for you. If you had like this magical power to just create any resource available for people with chronic disorders, what would that resource be? Like if you could just be like, hey, I want to give this to the world, and I think this would help people. What would that be? Can you think
I
of
would.
anything?
I mean, to me, with such a broad statement, I would snap my fingers and create medicine. I would just sit here snapping my fingers. Let's
So
pretend I created.
access to medication, just like that for
I
everyone.
would create literal medication out of thin
Okay.
air.
Yeah.
I would be because I would want to be responsible. So like, if I could will specific medications into the
Mhm.
world by snapping my fingers, I would sit here snapping my finger for like I'd sit
Yeah.
here and do it for like 60 minutes
Yeah.
and probably have enough to get people across the world
Yeah.
okay for a month. So
Because I get the opportunity to work with a lot of different patients from all across the world and our United States. And I see so many people struggling with, depression, or maybe they don't have insurance at the time and they can't get medication, and maybe they don't have a huge support team.
yeah,
And sometimes, and some of us are mentally stronger than others, and we can really dig deep and pull ourselves out and figure out a way, but not everyone can. And it's hard for me to not sit back sometimes and be like, well, that's really not fair for them. Like they have this chronic disorder. They don't have a good family system. They didn't have the best environment, and they're suffering. And it's like, I almost want to it's like, what can I do? Like in the future, what could I create that would give, I just want someone to have a fair opportunity at life.
yeah.
That's all I really want to see, you know?
I think that might go a long way because if you think about the people who don't have access to the meds, then you can see what that might do to the family. You can
Mhm.
see how that problem is a hindrance broadening outward. So I bet you there are
Yeah.
plenty of situations in this community where where one parent just couldn't hack it
Yeah.
and ousted,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing really sucks.
Yeah.
I would hope that access to medicine would make and access to care too
Yeah.
would make for a better family scenario because
Yeah.
even beyond the idea of nuclear family, the idea of being able to be a team for your child who
Mhm.
is now basically for lack of a better term, I kind of feel like a grease fire sometimes. Like I feel like a grease fire of a human being because you gotta put it out like it does,
Yeah.
and it doesn't get put out with water. So you
Yeah.
gotta really coordinate on a grease fire.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, hey, let's get into the second segment of this podcast. We're going to talk about your music right now. We're going to talk
Yep.
about the success of your music, kind of all positive stuff, and leading into your awesome campaign that you're doing. So, why don't you give our audience a little idea of like some of your successes? Like, let's have fun. Like, what's some of the fun
Absolutely.
things that you've got to do and accomplish while being a musician?
So, as a musician, I've gotten to meet a lot of people that I consider heroes of mine. I've gotten to meet people who are incredible musicians, and I've gotten to learn from them. Some of them are more famous than others, and some of them are just kind of like, you've got to be kidding me famous. But
Really?
also,
Yeah.
beyond that, I've gotten to appreciate what they do, like how they look at things and
Yeah.
what is virtuous in the craft for them.
Mhm.
So I've gotten to do that. I've gotten to play on a lot of incredible music and make a lot of incredible friendships through that act of trust. And with the hemophilia community specifically,
Yeah.
I found a way to be there. I found my place in the community, which is talking outward for it to the general public because
How did
the
you
hemo-
find that? Like, what was that switch or that moment that happened that all of a sudden made you say, man, this is my purpose now. Like, this is my mission. Like,
that is a great question because it was a fluke.
really?
I had a record to promote.
Yeah.
I put out an EP called Betamax in
Uh-huh.
2019,
Yep.
and when I was trying to get some coverage on it, I was asked by the reporter, who was a friend of mine, if there was
Mhm.
a story or a hook. And I said, "All right,
Okay.
let's because for a lot of my work I've been just a session guy
Yeah.
or I've been a bandmate and not necessarily wanted to draw that attention to myself."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Okay, my blood doesn't work. How about that? I've been struggling with issues regarding my arm that might
Yeah.
have made a lot of people quit music, but here I am like a bonehead bleeding into my elbow
Yeah.
as recently as then, still doing this thing for some reason.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting, isn't it? And he's like, yeah, that'll do.
Yeah.
So
I
with
read
that
that
article,
I read that article. Yeah. I mean, you unleashed it on them. You're like, all right, I'll give it to you. I mean, you
yeah,
told the whole
that
story.
was it. And in doing that, I didn't like at the time. It was purely pragmatic.
Yeah.
It was me being like, okay, let's see. Bad blood is good PR. Let's try it.
Yeah.
Like, so what happened from there was that I realized, I got to see it go outward and
Yeah.
see who knew me, and realize that they didn't know as much about me as I thought they did. That because I've been complaining about this my whole life, maybe I hadn't complained completely, or maybe I wasn't making it as burdensome on people as I might have worried I was.
Yeah.
So I got to really, because a lot of people are like, I had no idea. And I'm still getting that today. I'm like, oh, wow, good for me then. Good for me
Yeah.
that I didn't make this as much of your problem, but thank you for listening. So from there,
Yeah.
it made me realize, it made me feel good to share.
Yeah.
And it made me feel like this was the right place to share,
Wow.
because there are often times where you sharing, unless there's a real crisis, can be burdensome.
Hmm.
You inflict yourself on others.
Yeah.
So to be able to have this outlet for it and occasion to with my music,
Yeah.
it was pragmatic. So the idea of being another shaggy white dude with tattoos and a guitar,
Yeah.
there are millions of those. So
Hmm.
like having a more compelling story that actually brought me peace of mind to share and gave other people representation that they don't
Hmm.
ordinarily have outside of their own community was sort of where that went, and
Yeah.
it brought me back into the community
Wow.
in a sense of being able to participate. I got into the radar with the Hemophilia chapter of New York and with the
Mm.
New Jersey chapter again.
Yeah.
So that whole thing became really very, very good, and it really set this
Mm.
precedent, because for a while I didn't know how to blend, and
Yeah.
I didn't know that I wanted to.
Yeah. So how long would you say you've been sharing your story now with music and hemophilia? How long has it been?
It's been about a year and a half. It's been
Really?
if that
Okay.
article,
Mhm.
in that article, would I would consider that the first time outside the community that I've shared. I had shared a little bit before that,
Okay.
but by and large, I kind of kept them separate. I
Yeah.
was mostly just, hey, I'm a guitar player. My elbow hurts sometimes. Just a
Yeah.
heads up, you know. But I
So now you're full in, 100% in,
gotta be.
max hemophiliac, like the,
Yep.
musician. So a question, you've been doing it for a year and a half. During that time, how did you redefine your message? I think that you agree that sharing your message is so important for everyone to do. How do you find your message? How did you find yours? And because I think that a lot of people want to share and they don't know how, and they don't necessarily know what their message is.
I think it's important to think about, for one thing, just the idea of sharing stories within the community, getting to know someone, feeling like you got to get it out. That's the place, because we're all here to listen to each other, or we ought to be.
Mhm.
So if you can find someone who's willing to listen to you in that way, that's fine. Like, you don't have to go ahead and make a friggin' brand out of it like you and I are doing.
Yeah.
And that's something that happened over time anyway.
Yeah.
That's something that's going to, I guess, to have faith that if you want to do this,
Mhm.
you need to start by externalizing, by talking about things, by writing your thoughts down, and
That's good.
seeing what
Yeah.
all of what you're saying is the matter of it.
Yeah.
In my case, I didn't really get it proper till I started writing about it, which I hadn't been want to do for a while in my
Mhm.
music. So figuring out how to do that, figuring out what my voice was, and not just what me as a songwriter for a bigger core would be,
Yeah.
that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And from there, just really investing that time in making myself
Mhm.
better, feeling like because I felt like I needed to get some distance from the problems, or I needed to work towards overcoming things in order to
Yeah.
be substantial enough to speak.
Yeah.
You have to show people the process and the progress as much as you do the results.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
that sort of thing was important, and
Yeah,
if you want
that's
to
good advice, man. I really like that. Writing, I used to journal a lot in order to help me understand what my message was, and I think it's good advice just to tell people just to start, just go out there and start telling. It doesn't You don't have to have an exact plan.
just start talking about hemophilia,
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah.
Because that's really what it is, and it has to be beyond yourself. Like you have to. Don't get me wrong, we can be mighty champions of this, and we can let our unique personalities flourish, especially when it seems that there's nobody fulfilling the things that come naturally to us already as a community device.
Yeah.
So you can do that, and you can be unique. And in fact, I encourage the hell out of that.
Yeah.
But you need to figure out how this goes beyond you,
Mhm.
and how this
That's key.
is,
Yep.
yeah, because otherwise
Yep.
you're just it's good to get all attention on this disorder is good, but you're not going to necessarily find forward motion
Mhm.
unless you're really being solution oriented and figuring out what will work.
Yeah.
In my case, I with this new record I'm doing with Redefine.
Yeah. Talk about that a
uh,
little bit. That was next anyways. I want to know more about that campaign.
So right now, I have a crowdfunding campaign out on the Fractured Atlas platform. Fractured Atlas is a 501, so it's a nonprofit, and that means that any donations made towards this campaign are actually tax deductions. So that's a way that I'm doing this to try and be, to try and give something back, because I can't plan for everybody with like T-shirts and such. It
Yeah.
just seemed like why don't I just throw a write off at people, make the whole thing comprehensive.
Yeah.
But the record itself follows a loose story. It's not necessarily plot driven as of yet, but
Mm.
the idea of it is supposed to be about a demonstration of effort, because of the rehabilitation I did required a lot of effort, and the emotional growth that came from that was also something that required a lot of very deliberate effort. So
Yeah.
the idea of reflecting that effort into a story, or into a movement
Yeah.
that would not undermine the effort and get right to the good part.
Yeah.
It had to feel like a trajectory of ownership into effort, into revelation, into effort, into revelation, into climax, into resolution, sort of thing. So like there's only one song on it that outright deals with hemophilia,
Mhm.
and the rest of them are kind of all about sort of mental stuff, like
Yeah.
reflecting on the past, or depression, or anxiety, or rage. So it's absolutely through that lens, though.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and I'll go ahead and I'll put the links below in all the descriptions on YouTube and Spotify, so anyone can go ahead and check those out. And if you want to make a donation to help Max on his journey with this album, that would be awesome. And I know you would really appreciate that.
It would mean the world to me,
Yeah, and
even if
so
you just share it.
yeah, guys. So I'll definitely be sharing it everywhere after this. And so like what I read something on it, it was I mean, it's called Redefine Your Life, or you're trying to like redefine hemophilia, essentially.
That's the name of the campaign. Yeah.
Okay. So I just have a question on that. Like, what does that mean to you, redefining hemophilia?
For me, it meant redefining myself, because I'm sure with you, you've had the same thing where there are some days where you just look at yourself and all you see is hemophilia. Like
Mm,
it's a different kind of dysmorphia than it's absolutely dysmorphic in a way where all you feel like is your disease.
yeah.
And so it was kind of me looking at myself differently. It was me refocusing my relationship with hemophilia into places that were more productive and less sort of brooding and selfish.
Yeah.
From there, redefine means other things as well. Redefining hemophilia to me is also a bit of a mantra about how I speak to people outside the community, because
Yeah.
by and large, I'm the first person that a lot of people know with hemophilia when I
Yeah.
meet them. So to be able to redefine it in the eyes of the general public
Mhm.
in a couple of ways is very important to me, to make it so that people do not just think of this disorder as a catastrophe,
Yeah.
that they don't think of it as just like a wives' tale where you prick your finger and bleed out.
Yeah.
So to be able to say that kind of thing to someone and not have their mind go to an immediate liability is
Yeah.
redefining hemophilia, as well as
Yeah.
giving it its own existence outside of perhaps what people know of it from HIV and AIDS.
Yeah, man. When I saw that, I was really excited because I really believe in redefining hemophilia in your own way. And I know that it's taken me a long time to do that, but that's something that I promote. And when I've made a lot of mistakes since I've been in the hemophilia community, But one of the awesome things that I did was when I created Hemo Life, I created it with an idea that I was going to create a logo, and it was my with that logo and branding, it was my obligation to create the culture of what that logo meant, what it represented. During that time when I started, not too many people were talking about hemophilia. It was a very closeted thing. You didn't put on your Instagram bio, "Hey, I'm a hemophiliac," you
Yeah,
know.
that's a new thing across the board. Like
Yeah. So
you were definitely at the head of that.
yeah, I mean, that was at the beginning because I remember when I did it, I was embarrassed. When I wrote that on my wall, when I first did it, I was embarrassed by it. And I was like, wow, you're really doing this, huh? And, I just kind of stuck to that. And I just got so many messages over the years of people saying like, you've made me, you've inspired me to put hemophilia on my Instagram page. And so like, that's when I knew I was kind of doing the right thing. And then I wanted to create like this like vibe of like having hemophilia was like a badge of honor. Like it wasn't something that you're disgraced of. It was something of like, you know what? These are all my blood brothers and sisters who are all fighting, and we are so much more empowered and stronger because of what we're going through. So
Bleeders one, bleeders all, man.
yeah, man. So I loved when I saw that Redefine Hemophilia, and I just wanted to see what your tips were to someone who was like, man, how do I redefine hemophilia in my life? And I think you're doing a good job by leading by example for sure. One thing that you said that really resonates with me is when you kind of took yourself out of the equation and you start asking, what can I truly do for not me, but for the community? And
Yeah.
when you can really have that outlook, I think you can um, level up essentially with your mission.
It tells you what your mission is essentially, because for a while essentially like I want to have my presence and my outlook here, but my
Mhm.
music needs to earn its place. It's less
Yeah,
entitled to that bandwidth. It's what I do, but I don't do it for the community. I am of the community doing it.
yeah,
And then if I do it right, perhaps it can be considered a community service beyond. But
yeah,
to think about it in terms of, hey, what I guess I am is like you said, I got away with words. I'm a good mouthpiece.
yeah,
I've been a performer for most of my life, so I'm
yeah,
comfortable on stages. I'm comfortable talking to people. So in
yeah,
that way, I provide value, but I can also listen, and I can also be somebody who tries to make people feel heard
yeah,
and tries to open dialogues and crush beefs if I can,
yeah,
because what you're dealing with is a lot of people who feel very deeply and who are often in a lot of pain, and therefore their fuses can be incredibly short.
hmm,
So to be able to try and refocus with that and say like, hey, I just see a couple of guys here who are in a lot of pain and this got out of hand
yeah,
is oftentimes a big deal.
yeah.
Because how often have we lashed out and hurt?
Absolutely, all the time,
I'm
all the time.
100% guilty of it. So to be
Yep.
able to be on the other side and try to be a better angel, so to speak, is
Yeah.
very important to me. To be able to be yourself too, to encourage people to be yourself,
Mm,
you know, it is also very important. I I think that everyone's relationship with hemophilia is going to be different, and that it is something that is layered, and you peel different layers of it away,
yeah.
perhaps. So for me, a lot of it came out of trying to point, and I had a lot of comedian friends. A lot of my
Mm,
relationships with my friends who have sort of the sense of humor
yeah.
allowed me to figure out how to talk about it in ways that were entertaining, or
Yeah.
that were not uncomfortable for other people to hear. So to
Mm,
me, that's finding ways to own it.
yeah. I love it, man. I've got two more questions for you, and then I want to hear some music, if that's
Hell
okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, man.
So, as a veteran hemophiliac, you've gone through so much adversity and you've overcome it. If you can give, one piece of advice to the next generation of bleeders who are going to be watching these videos, what would you want them to know?
Stretch.
Stretch.
Stretch. Like when we were kids,
Yeah.
rice was the big thing. Like
Yeah.
rest, ice, compression, elevation, and
Hmm.
that goes far, but it doesn't. There's a point in which stretching and getting yourself mobilized
Yeah.
again is the right move. So figure out when you can mobilize, get mobilized, start getting your blood flow back,
Mm,
and so to stretch and to keep the body limbered, I would hope
Yeah.
would be a way of avoiding A, injury in the first place, and B, becoming too sedentary.
Awesome. Last podcast, the message was move. That was it. Move. So I love it. Last one was move. Yours is stretch. I love where it's going right now. Like,
yeah, those are exactly. I'm glad that the person before me is in exactly the same headspace.
yeah, that's awesome. All right. So what should we expect from Max in the next 5 years? How are we going to see you and within the community? And what's the game plan for you?
The romantic way to look at this is I am vying to be the Bruce Springsteen of hemophilia. That would be the easy, punchy way to say it. When you look at Springsteen, he has his credibility based on the fact that he's found ways to continually speak to the messages of the disenfranchised and to speak to the needs and the hopes of people. So I'm hoping that throughout this, you will be seeing quite a bit of me. With this record, I intend to let the community know who I am, what I'm about,
Yeah.
and to let the world know what hemophilia is about through publicity, through discussion.
Yeah.
As the world opens back up, I intend to take this message to state chapters and to tour. And
that would be amazing. I hope that you start getting a lot of opportunities to showcase your talents in front of others in the community. So
it's totally started. I'm grateful to say it started immediately. Essentially,
really?
I was asked after that article. Jeremy Griffin of New York City Hemophilia Chapter reached out to me. We got to know each other.
Yeah.
And he invited me to perform and share at a gala. Oh, that was maybe less than a month later. So in that way, little opportunities have started to come up. And they've come up in very appropriate ways as I've gotten better at expressing myself.
Yeah.
Like that comic you mentioned before was Mighty Endeavors. That was an early attempt at expressing myself beyond just writing. So, with this being the way that I am working at it, I feel as though I'm becoming prepared to receive the opportunities in time with getting them.
Yeah. Awesome, man. That's exciting. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you jumping on the podcast, but there's no way and I could ever let you go without hearing some of your music. So why don't you give us a little something?
All right. So this is a song. This is one of my favorites off the new record. Let me scooch back a little.
Sure.
So the song is called Pass, and it's going to be one of the early singles off the record. And it's essentially about dealing with your feelings mid-feeling them. This is a battle that you have won. This is a battle that you have won. This is a battle that you have won. This is the damage you have done. This is a battle that you have won. This is a battle that you have won. This is a battle that you have won. This is the person you've become. You're coming to appreciation for the way you feel inside. So come to an appreciation for the way you feel inside, because it's just the way you feel right now. And that's, well, it's just the way you feel right now, and it'll pass. It's about kind of like outlining this stuff out for myself. This is how I get over things as I write songs, apparently. Yep.
Love it.
This is a lesson that you have learned. This is a lesson that you have learned. This is a lesson that you have learned. This is a bridge that you have burned. This is a lesson that you have learned. This is a lesson that you have learned. This is a lesson that you have learned. This is the corner you have turned. And it's just the way you right now and it'll pass. It's just the way you feel right now, so let it pass. For the way you feel inside, come to an appreciation for the way you feel inside now. Come to an appreciation for the way you feel inside. Come to an appreciation for the way you feel inside, because it's just the way you feel right now and it'll pass. Yeah, it's just the way you feel right now and it'll pass. Well, it's just the way you feel right now and it'll pass. Yeah, it's just the way you feel right now, so let it pass. Let it pass. Let it pass. Let it pass. You know, something like that.
Good job, bro. Good job. That was awesome.
Thanks for letting me do that.
Yeah, man. Where can we find more of your music? Where can we listen?
You can find me on Max Feinstein is where you will find me on Spotify, on Bandcamp. If you're looking for sort of my day-to-day doings, you can find me at I__Maxwell.
Okay.
Or, you know, Max Feinstein, if you just type that in, I'm pretty sure IG will find it.
Sweet. All right, bro. Well, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it. I think everyone's going to enjoy your message. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, LA. Thanks a lot, man.
Talk to you later.
Later.
Yeah.